Now, the death of the British paratrooper in Ukraine has intensified tensions between Moscow and London. Russia has accused Britain of playing a broader role in its ongoing war with Ukraine. The paratrooper has been named as George Hooley of the United Kingdom's Parachute Regiment. And the Russian Foreign Ministry spokeswoman Maria Zakharova has demanded that Britain should reveal what a British soldier who was killed in Ukraine was really doing in the battlefield.
This is the first time the British government has publicly confirmed the death of a career military officer during the Ukrainian conflict. The Prime Minister pompously claimed that this same Lance Corporal George Hooley allegedly helped Ukraine in its fight for freedom. I'd like to hear more details from them. These details will certainly emerge. But London must honestly reveal what exactly was this Hooley doing there. It seems as if someone in Britain may have begun carefully preparing public opinion for military losses in Ukraine that will simply be impossible to hide any longer.
Now, the UK Ministry of Defence said that the soldier died in a tragic accident while observing Ukrainian forces test a new defence capability. The British Prime Minister Keir Starmer paid tributes to the 28-year-old paratrooper, calling his life full of courage and determination. He said that the soldier had died while training the Ukrainian troops away from combat.
Lance Corporal Hooley was injured in a tragic accident away from the front lines while observing Ukrainian forces testing a new defensive capability. His life was full of courage and determination. He served our country with honour and distinction around the world in the cause of freedom and democracy, including as part of the small number of British personnel in Ukraine.
The ministry further added that the paratrooper was due for promotion to corporal in January and had taken on those responsibilities during his deployment. And this marks the first death of a British service member in Ukraine since Russia's full-scale invasion began in February 2022. And this comes after a series of recent meetings involving the American President Donald Trump and European leaders, all aimed at bringing the war to an end. And it also sparked some fresh questions about the presence of foreign troops on Ukrainian soil. The British plans to join France and 30 other countries in deploying forces there as part of the coalition of the willing. However, Russian President Vladimir Putin has repeatedly warned that any foreign forces, including NATO troops on Ukraine's territory, will be seen as legitimate targets. Meanwhile, in September, the Ukrainian President Volodymyr Zelensky announced plans to deploy thousands of foreign troops under the post-war security guarantees. So as Thailand and Colombia conflict drags on, families are caught in the crossfire on both sides of the border. Many fear that the conflict could spread further inland, as the fighting has now entered into its fourth day. The officials have said that at least about 19 people have been killed in the latest hostilities, which resumed on Monday. And according to Thailand's defense ministry, 9 Thai soldiers were amongst those who were killed, while more than 120 have been wounded. While Cambodia's defense ministry has reported that 10 civilian deaths and 60 others being wounded. Meanwhile, the American President Donald Trump is all set to make a phone call with the leaders of the 2 Southeast Asian nations, aiming to put an end to the renewed conflict that erupted between the nations over a border dispute.
Yeah, I think I'll have to make a phone call. I was going to say that the Thailand and Cambodia, one of the 8 that I settled, they've been fighting for a long time. They've been fighting for a very long time, many, many, many decades. But I got along great with both. I found they were 2 great leaders, 2 great people, and I settled it once. I think I can do it pretty quickly.
The Trump's move comes after Thailand and Cambodia accused each other of breaching a truce agreement that was brokered by him earlier this year. So as both sides accuse each other of targeting civilian areas, the situation has led to the displacement of over 500,000 people in the border region where jets, tanks and drones are waging a battle. So as fighting continues to rage on, fleeing Cambodian villagers are finding shelter at makeshift camps as they hope for the conflict to come to an end.
They are fighting so hard. I can't stay home. I had to flee for my life. This is my 3rd time fleeing.
Now, the ongoing border clashes between Thailand and Cambodia in the northeastern Thai province of Surin have forced the evacuation of nearly about 60,000 residents and the closure of schools and hospitals.
I'm worried that their strike will reach us because we are all here. There's a large number of people gathering together at shelter, and it's not just this shelter. There are a number of them close to each other. If the strike hits us, it would be devastating.
Yemen's desert is shaking. Not from missiles, not from airstrikes this time, but from two of the most powerful Arab nations, turning their gazes on each other. You're watching Times XP. My name is Dhriti Yatri, and Saudi Arabia is on one side, the UAE on the other. Both once allies, both once partners in the same war. Today, they are standing on the edge of a dangerous split. And at the center of the new storm, the Southern Transnational Council, the STC. Well, the UAE-backed militia that have just made its boldest, fastest move in years now. In only 10 days, the STC launched a lightning offensive, seizing oil fields, capturing strategic coastal towns, and taking control of over 70% of Yemen's oil reserves. Yes, 70%. Now that's not just a battlefield victory, that is Yemen's economic heart, its lifeline, its power source. And the Saudis are furious. Riyadh has sent its final warning. Saudi leaders, including Major General Mohammed Al-Khatini, he made their message really brutally clear. Withdraw your militia, restore the old security order, or face the consequences. Well, this is the strongest language that Saudi Arabia has ever used. Not against Iran, not against the Houthis, but against the UAE's proxy army. Now, on the ground, the situation is even more explosive. STC fighters, trained, armed, and funded by the UAE, have pushed Saudi-aligned forces out of the key region. STC fighters, trained, armed, and funded by the UAE, have pushed Saudi-aligned forces out of the key region in Hadramaut. Border checkpoints fallen, oil terminals captured, Saudi bases surrounded. The UAE says that it wants security in the south. But the Saudi Arabia, they look at it in a very different angle. They see it as a takeover. And now the shadow of a new war, it is looming. For the first time in decades, the Middle East is watching two Gulf giants, Saudi Arabia and the UAE, stand on opposite sides of the same battle. Well, these countries shaped the Yemen war together. If you remember, they coordinated the airstrike, they shared intelligence, they spent billions. But now their interests are colliding, their patience is ending. Why? Because they want oil, they want control on the oil, and their rivalry, it could be a real confrontation here. Now, what this means for the rest of the region? It really matters a lot, because Yemen is not just a conflict zone. Of course it is, but not just. It is a crossroad too. Crossroad of oil shipping routes, of Red Sea security, of Gulf influence, and of the military presence from Iran to the US. Now, if Saudi Arabia and the UAE clash, even indirectly, then the entire Middle East, the map, it could shift. New alliances, new enemies, new fault lines. The people of Yemen are caught in the middle again. While foreign-backed militia fight for oil fields, it is the ordinary families who face another cycle of displacement, another wave of hunger, another chapter of war. 8 years of conflict, and now a new one threatens to begin. The simple question, but the answer is not. Will Riyadh and Abu Dhabi step back, or are we witnessing the beginning of a Gulf versus Gulf confrontation that could redraw the future of the entire region? For now, the desert is silent, the armies, they are moving, and the countdown has already begun. Here, we are going to talk about Caracas, a sea of red, drums, chants, and Nicolas Maduro all ready for a fight. You're watching Times XP. My name is Dhriti Yatri, and the Venezuelan president stepped onto the stage as tens of thousands filled the entire streets. Flags waving, slogans echoing, the city shaking with energy. This wasn't just a celebration. It was a warning, a message, a challenge, because Nicolas Maduro wasn't talking about history today. He was talking about the United States, and he was very, very angry. If the US attacks, we will break their teeth. Yes, those were his words, sharp, loud and deliberate. Well, he said it while marking the 166th anniversary of the Battle of Santa Ynez, a moment Venezuela remembers as a symbol of resistance. But today, that symbolism was aimed straight at Washington after the United States seized a Venezuela-linked oil vessel in the Caribbean. In fact, the crowd, it exploded, drums, whistles, fireworks. Maduro lifted his hand, feeding the moment. He painted the US as an aggressor, moving warships, creating tensions, provoking chaos, that's what he said. And he promised that Venezuela would not kneel, not flinch, not surrender. But then Maduro took a very strange turn. He claimed Americans themselves, they were standing with Venezuela, that anti-war protests were happening across the US, which is true, by the way. Now, whether he was really real about this being thankful to the Americans or it was just political theater, he didn't really care. The narrative, it was set. Venezuela is resisting and the world is watching. And then he zeroed in on one name, Maria Corina Machado, the opposition figure who just won the Nobel Prize. Well, Maduro didn't celebrate her, he didn't congratulate her, he attacked her. He accused her of begging foreign powers, specifically the US, to intervene in Venezuela. Now, in Maduro's story, she isn't a Peace Prize winner, she's a traitor. Well, the moment, it felt like a pre-battle speech. The flags, the music, the fierce warning, Maduro was building a narrative of a country under siege. A country that must unite, that must fight and defend its dignity against the foreign pressure. So, what does this all really mean here? A US oil seizure, a Venezuelan president issuing threats, a firebrand opposition leader winning global recognition, a public rally turning into a war crime. The tension is no longer political, it is personal. And it's heating up, and that too really fast.
Just a day after the Russian and the Chinese bombers flew over the Sea of Japan, the US nuclear-capable bombers joined the Japanese fighter jets in a show of strength. The drills featuring the deadly B-52 bombers and the stealth fighter jets have now pushed the region to the edge. Beijing says that the drills with Russia are pretty routine, but with tensions flaring up. The question, of course, is this: is East Asia now turning into a new theatre of war? Our next report tells you more.
Superpowers are once again testing waters. This time it's Japan and Taiwan who are caught between China and Russia on one side and the Americans on the other side. Fighter jets, bombers, warships have been deployed amidst rising rhetoric. Less than 24 hours after Russia and China teamed up over Japan's skies, Washington and Tokyo have hit back with a swift show of force. US nuclear-capable bombers flew over the Sea of Japan. They were joined by Japanese fighter jets, an unmistakable response to Beijing and Moscow's joint drills. 2 US B-52 bombers, which can carry nuclear weapons, thundered over the Sea of Japan. 3 Japanese F-35 stealth fighters and 3 F-15 jets escorted the US bomber. The timing of the joint drills is no coincidence. Just a day before, Russian and Chinese nuclear bombers flew right through Japan's air defense zone, delivering Tokyo a message it cannot ignore. Beijing maintains the drills with Russia were routine exercises aimed at maintaining regional peace and stability. It has warned Japan not to jump to conclusions.
I would like to emphasize once again that this joint Chinese-Russian aerial strategic patrol is a display which comes under an annual cooperative project plan. This demonstrates both sides' determination and capability to jointly address regional security challenges and maintain regional peace and stability. There is no need for Japan to make a fuss or jump to conclusions.
East Asia is now on the edge. What began as a war of words over Taiwan now threatens to blow up into a new theatre of war. Geopolitical tensions have flared up in the region after Japanese PM's remarks over military intervention in Taiwan. Beijing has since been on the offensive. Earlier this week, Japan accused China of locking radars at Japanese military aircraft, but Beijing disputes the charge. It has also sent its aircraft carrier via Japan's Miyako Strait. As the world's two superpowers lock horns, East Asia is now a tinderbox. A tiny spark or miscalculation can plunge the region into uncharted territory. Bureau Report, VION, World is One.
Washington is drifting away from NATO as its European allies are feeling the jitters, and now Moscow is slowly fortifying its defences. The shadow of the Cold War is coming back to haunt again. Nuclear fire is returning to Europe's doorstep, and this time it is wearing the Belarusian colours. Our next report takes a closer look at NATO's military moves and Russia's deployment of nuclear weapons into Belarus. Take a look.
Lines are shifting, tempers are tightening, and the new nuclear frontier is rising on NATO's doorstep. The silence is deafening, the stakes are immeasurable. In a move that ripped through the already fraying fabric of transatlantic security, the US is hinting at a reduced commitment and the redeployment of assets from NATO's eastern flank. The vacuum is immediate. Former President Biden's administration had announced deployment of long-range missiles in Germany, a posture NATO allies view as a necessary shield, but Moscow calls it a direct escalation. Moscow announced its counter-move, the transfer of tactical nuclear arms to its close ally, Belarus. President Lukashenko says these Russian-supplied warheads would be deployed throughout his country. Belarus is also deploying Russia's Oreshnik intermediate-range ballistic missile system. Europe's frontier states Poland, Lithuania, Latvia are on high alert. Western intel agencies say that Moscow has also moved nukes to Kaliningrad, a Russian exclave between Poland and Lithuania. The region is a key concern for NATO because of its advanced missile systems and expanding nuclear infrastructure. As Washington recalibrates and NATO questions its next move, a new nuclear frontier is being drawn, not by treaties or diplomacy, but by raw, visible force. And the world watches, a nuclear chessboard reset, one calculated move at a time. Bureau Report, WION, World is One.
NATO's chief has urged the West to prepare for war like our grandparents endured. Mark Rutte warned that the UK and other allies are next in Russia's sights and said member states must rapidly boost defence spending. Speaking at a security conference in Berlin, Rutte said, "We are Russia's next target. I fear that too many are quietly complacent. Too many don't feel the urgency, and too many believe that time is on our side. It is not. The time for action is now. Conflict is at our door. Russia has brought war back to Europe, and we must be prepared." Rutte predicted that Russia could engage the alliance in direct conflict within the next 5 years. Coming from the chief of NATO, this is no scaremongering, but a genuine warning to be heeded. In fact, Russia has proven these fears valid just this week. After the death of Lance Corporal George Hooley, a British paratrooper in Ukraine, the Kremlin has sought to exploit it as justification for actively going after NATO troops. A Kremlin spokesperson said any European servicemen in Ukraine would be regarded as legitimate targets. Rutte was also speaking in the wake of an astonishing tirade directed by America at Europe that was tellingly welcomed by Moscow. A report signed by Trump said the continent stands at the edge of civilizational erasure and blasted its woke censorship and mass migration policies. Then, in an interview with Politico, Trump disparaged Europe as decaying and its leaders as weak. However, Rutte insisted that America's safety relies on a stable Europe, even if Trump doesn't know it.
The triangle meets again. A new power game in the Middle East we're talking about. Tehran. A cold winter morning, three powerful flags rising side by side. Iran, China and Saudi Arabia, a picture that the entire world thought that it will never see again. You're watching Times XP, my name is Riddhi Attri, but there they are, sitting at the same table, talking softly, negotiating deeply and sending a very loud message to the entire world. Here's the third round and the most important one that we are talking about here. This was not any random meeting. This is not a courtesy handshake, not a photo op. This was the third major trilateral dialogue since the 2023 Beijing Agreement, the deal that shocked the Middle East by bringing Saudi Arabia and Iran back from the edge of a 7-year Cold War. Now, inside the room, Iran's Deputy Foreign Minister, Majid Takht, he led the entire team. Chinese diplomats took their seats calmly. Saudi envoys, they came with a clear agenda. Hours of behind the closed talks, they followed, but what did they discuss? So the answer is, according to Iranian and Chinese officials, the three nations reviewed how far they have come since the historic Beijing deal. Reopening embassies, restarting diplomatic channels, expanding trade, building political trust, reducing tensions in the Gulf, but then came the big talking point. Stop Israel now. That was a joint demand. In a very rare, unified voice, Iran, China and Saudi Arabia demanded an entire halt to Israeli military actions in Gaza, in Lebanon, in fact, in Syria also. They also condemned the attacks on Iran's sovereignty, a clear reference to secret operations, strikes and cyber attacks widely attributed to Israel. The message was, enough. The region will not tolerate more destabilization here. But you know what, China, that is the silent partner behind this trial. Now, for the very third time, well, Beijing positioned itself as a mediator, a calm broker, a strategic listener, a rising Middle Eastern power. From Beijing to Riyadh to Tehran, China is rebuilding the diplomatic map of the entire region. Now, here's the backstory of that, the month of secret dialogue. So here's what happened in recent weeks. Turkish officials arrived in Tehran for security talks. Saudi envoys flew in for private discussions. Multiple intelligence-backed channels opened quietly. The Middle East is entering a phase of talk to avoid war. But then came a twist. That twist is secret exchange between Iran, Saudi Arabia and the Trump administration. So according to Iranian and Western reports, something unusual happened. Iran's new president, Masoud Pezeshkian, allegedly sent a message to Donald Trump, but not directly here. The message went through Mohammed bin Salman, and Washington replied back with three tough demands. A. Stop uranium enrichment. B. Stop supporting armed groups in the entire region. And C. Limit your ballistic missiles. Basically, in short, he is saying that if you want a deal, play by our rules. But Tehran denied everything. Khamenei's counter-shock, it was massive. Soon after the news broke, Iran's supreme leader, Ayatollah Ali Khamenei, he publicly shut it down. Lies, pure lies. Yes. So, was he kept in the dark? Or was this a political move just to avoid the embarrassment after the US responses? Nobody knows right now, but it added a new layer to the mystery to the Tehran's trilateral meeting. In the end, the whole world is asking, what does this mean? So the answer is that this is no longer just diplomacy, this is a new Middle East that is taking shape. Three superpowers are collaborating, Iran, China and Saudi Arabia, a triangle that challenges the United States' influence, stops the regional escalation, builds economic corridor and pushes back against Israeli military actions. A triangle that may decide the future of West Asia.